It's time for the WrestleCast on the Sportscast Media Network. Join us now for a discussion on wrestling at the high school and college levels. Here's Gage Gill, Shane Barron, and Danny Davis.
We'd like to welcome you to the WrestleCast, a podcast about the stories behind the wrestlers. Please like and subscribe so that we can continue to bring you this program. Also, if you haven't, please take a look at some of our other content on our channel. Like and subscribe. Coming up, we'll take a look at conference wrestling results in our area. And Mediapolis coach Mark Griffin is here, and we'll have an interview with him and get his take on all things wrestling. With me are Shane Barron of the Burlington Hawkeye and Gage Gill, the current principal at Winfield Mount Union. Guys, how are you? How was the week?
I had a pretty good week. It's good to see the pavement on the street once again. I mean, and the kids come back to school. I'm also a teacher. The kids come back to school, and they wanted their winter break to last a little bit longer, I could tell. So that was, once we got past that, though, good week for all of us.
Gage?
It's the year of the Wolf. We had a cross-country state qualifier, semifinalist for 8-man football, first ever girls wrestling qualifier, which was pretty exciting. And regional duels coming up on Tuesday, and then districts coming up. Third-ranked basketball team right now, too.
Are they?
It's the year of the Wolf in the Iowa calendar.
Wow, well, Winfield's no stranger to having great basketball teams. Great stuff. Well, as we do every week, it's time now for Point Counterpoint. Each of you, we've taken an issue, and each of you will have 30 seconds to give your opinion on this issue. Guys, what is it this week?
The Wrestleback system and the point system involved. We just had the Southeast Iowa Super Conference tournament, read the results in the Burlington Hawkeye, and found out that all the West Burlington Notre Dame people that reached the finals won their finals match and yet lost their the title to Columbus Junction Winfield Mount Union. Not taking anything away from either team. Congratulations to both teams, but when you read that, you just kind of say to yourself, shouldn't the team that had the most champions in the finals ultimately win the tournament? So that's my view on that.
Engage, you've got a counterpoint?
So when you get into those tournaments, there's placement points. And so when you're in like the fifth, third, first match, everybody gets the point up to whatever they would lose to. And then if you win, you get the placement points for winning plus however the match finished. So if you get a pin, for example, you'd get those bonus points. And how a lot of those tournaments work, especially like at the state wrestling tournament, the bonus points you get more of them in the later rounds. If you want the wrestlebacks to matter, it's predetermined, but this is how many points third's worth, this is how many points fourth's worth, this is how many bonus points worth. So I think for the system to work, you got to have that stuff matter.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I was going to introduce him here in a little bit. We've got Mediapolis coach, wrestling coach Mark Griffin. But right now I'm just going to interview him. And, Coach, you tell me your take on what these guys said.
I think it can go either way. I mean, how much does it really happen where you have 7 champions? So that's something to take a look at and consider. I mean, if I had to pick, that's half the lineup right there winning championships. So it seems odd that they wouldn't have come out with the victory for the conference championship. But been like this for how long now? It'd be hard to change.
Well, Danny, make sure that the emails from Winfield and Columbus Junction don't reach my desk on this one. I mean, I see both sides, and I'm a former track coach, and I get how important getting 4th place versus 5th place can be in a point system, and it is predetermined. I just wonder if maybe it's time to look at perhaps making the final round worth more points to maybe give the individual a bigger boost for his team.
I have a solution. We have a conference dual tournament also. Because, Notre Dame with 7 champs, those 7 guys probably would have not lost a match then, in theory. So you just also have a dual tournament, the Saturday before.
And that's honestly something I've been advocating. So this year was the first year in a while, because we used to do it. I think my first year when I was a coach at Columbus, they had Pleen, he was in charge of the conference schedule, and we had it to where we were only dueling each team in the conference once, and there was no award at the end. It was more just like bragging rights And then they went away with it because I think Cardinal left our conference, so there wasn't an even way to schedule all of them. And like last year, we wrestled Waco 3 times. We wrestled Notre Dame twice. We didn't even wrestle New London. And to me, that just seemed odd. Like, where's the end goal? You got to have your why, as a wrestler to get to the end. And so this year, we voted last year that we were going to wrestle everyone just once. And some teams had quads one day. Some teams, we were lucky that we had tries every Thursday. But then there were some teams that only had a duel, and with all the cancellations, we ended up having to cancel last Thursday. That was Highland and New London. So, like, the standings at the end weren't correct. So, again, that was a bummer because there's no way to say this person got first in duels, this person got second, this person got third. But I would like to have a dual tournament. I think the reason why they don't is because I think if you looked yesterday, I think just the top 3 teams had all 14 weight classes. And we were one of the teams other than this year that didn't have 14 weight classes. So that's, to go with some of the teams that only have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. I think that's why they're not doing it. But, this was our first year that we had it, so I tried to get in as many dual tournaments as possible because that's fun as a team. I didn't get to experience that in my high school, but then when I was on my national team for Team Illinois, like, those were some of my funnest memories was wrestling in dual tournaments.
I could see it happening sort of in the shootout realm, the top 2 teams.
Or even take the top
squared
4.
Off, or you can go
them, or
you can go 1 through 4, 1 through 2. Would that mess up the amount of meets you can get into per year? All I know is it used to be you could have 15, I believe. Yeah,
it's 15. They added this year if you weren't a team going to the team duels, you were able to add 1 more. But it's weigh-ins. It's not necessarily it goes by weigh-ins, not duels. You can have as many duels as you could fit in as long as you're weighing in only those 15 times. That doesn't include districts and state.
Well, one thing that has to be looked at is I just interviewed a basketball coach who's had roughly 5 games in the last 7 nights because of all the makeups and stuff. So we would probably have to tinker around with some scheduling if we were going to add that super duel, super shootout. But I see the merits of it.
I think they should do it right before break. I think that would be a lot of teams are off during that week headed into break. And we usually go to Eddyville, Blakesburg, Fremont.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of teams don't wrestle that week. I think that would be a great week because then you have 2 weeks off, and it's like to go from 3 to 2 weeks, then try to get back into wrestling shape for your second half of the season. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I'd be all for having it that week before break.
Always amazes me. We have people that come in here. I've interviewed people in the past, and they're always scared of a microphone. But once you get them talking, you wind them up, and they're just a natural. So let me introduce you, Coach Griffin. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Glen Ellen, Illinois. I went to Glenbard South High School. We weren't known for our wrestling with having Glenbard West, Glenbard East, and Glenbard North. We're all big powerhouses. So, when we started, we didn't have a big team, and, I was just a big advocate for it and tried to get as many kids as I could. From there, I went to the University of Dubuque in Iowa, and that's where I wrestled there. And that's kind of how I came to Iowa, and I started at Winfield Mount Union as a teacher there and coached at Columbus for 2 years, and then I ended up moving here to Mediapolis. This is my 3rd year as the head coach there. I'm also a middle school physical education teacher there. And, yeah, I love it. I bleed orange.
How was the transition from Columbus, Winfield Mount Union to Mediapolis program?
Both schools have a rich tradition in wrestling, so it was an easy transition. I love being here. I love the community. Dan Cummings, he's a big mentor of mine. He's been a lot of help with the transition of getting into here. And anything I need, he's always there with open arms and helping me out with whatever. And I appreciate it. Same with Mark Swafford.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things this past week we were just talking about a little bit ago was the Super Conference matches. Wanted to find out your take on them. How'd everything go?
We had 13 out of 14 wrestlers compete. One ended up being sick at the last minute, and out of the 13, we had 12 place winners. So that was a win for our team with having all freshmen and sophomores, so I couldn't be happier about that. And we look to improve on that. We got 2 more years with this group. If everyone continues to go out and puts the work in the off season, the sky's the limit for this team. I'm really excited for them. I had them all my first year in 7th grade with junior high football, and to me that's really how you got to get them interested, and that's why I do junior high football, is to build that relationship with them on the football field. And football and wrestling go hand in hand, and whether you want to be a good wrestler or not, to be a good football player, I think wrestling really helps you out being that good football player. That's what I did, and being a good coach comes from experience, and that's how I got in wrestling. I didn't even start wrestling until 8th grade, and it was only because my football coach said, hey, I think this could do a lot for your football career. And sure enough, I ended up liking wrestling more only because of the independentness. I didn't have to rely on 10 other guys on a football field, and it was just me out on that wrestling mat.
From your perspective, was there any results that surprised you in a positive way, like some kid wrestled way beyond what you expected?
So our Parker Lang, our 215-pounder, he wrestled to his ability, but he lost last week to the L&M kid in the finals. I'm pretty sure he got pinned. And then he went and he pinned him. So that was a big accomplishment for him. I'm super proud of him, and we're looking forward to districts. And he wrestled 215. He's wrestled 215 all season, but he's only been 194, 195. So he's wrestling light, and for him to go out there with those big boys and take control, it's fun to watch.
So you're kind of talking about how you have a young team. I was looking at some results. The Ridgeview girls won their super regional by 3 points, and it actually happened to be like girls winning some wrestlebacks and stuff like that, where they weren't going to state, but they helped them get that team title. You were kind of talking about individual versus team. How do you focus on both? Like, do you focus on the individual and then that helps the team? Or do you preach like team elements too? Or like, how do you kind of navigate we're in a team sport, but it's, mano-a-mano at each of the 14 weights,
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been learning that this year because my first 2 years we didn't have anywhere near a full team. This is the first time having a full team in a while at Mediapolis, first time for me. So, I mean, yeah, you got to preach team, and, we look at the individuals that have been succeeding, most of them being sophomores just because they got that year under their belt, and we have team captain meetings every week to kind of go over that and try to get everybody on board on the same page. But I still haven't figured out the answer, if I'm being honest, because it is new to me. And we're just plugging along and we're learning all together. So it's been a team effort, and I think that answers your question right there. Is it's a group effort, and we're learning together, and we're going to figure it out here in the next couple of years.
Earlier, you said that the 120 division was loaded. How is the Southeast Iowa Super Conference tournament a predictor for the future? I mean, you have 2A teams, you have 1A teams, so some of these kids won't see the champion or not. But overall, is this a really good indicator of what the districts are going to look like for individual results? Meaning, if you won a championship for this Super Conference tournament, you're probably going to win the district, or at least get second.
See, it all depends, because it depends what district you get in. Some are lopsided, some aren't. It just honestly, it just depends on what district you're in, because you can get stuck with two other really good hammers and you could be the champion at the conference tournament, but you're still stuck with those two other really good competitors. I mean, most of our champions at the conference tournament are going to do really well, you know, but there's some that may not be lucky. It's hit or miss on each year which district you fall into.
Do you like the going away from sectionals and just having the district, but I think it's 12 districts now, top 2 go? Do you like that format better, or did you prefer the sectionals then districts, but there's a few less if you had to pick?
I like that they got away from sectionals only because of the team aspect, because before when there was sectionals, they'd have these kids wrestle the sectional tournament, then the district tournament, and then I think it was the first day, that Friday, I believe, Thursday before state, they'd have them wrestle their hearts out against the top 8 teams, and then, the next 3 days you're in the state tournament. Good luck, you know.
Right.
Is that fair to those top teams and those top individuals? So I like the format that we have now, where we're doing all of that this upcoming week, and then they get their rest to go on to districts and then state. Yeah, that's my take on it. And then, also now they did 24 kids that could make it to state instead of the 16. So
do you like that?
Yes and no. When it fills out, yes, but sometimes it doesn't. We've only had 1 year of it so far, so we'll see how it works this year. Wrestling Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you only wrestle one match because there's so many kids there now. For the rest of the day, it's hard to really stay focused and dialed in with all that off time. And again, that's only 1 year. That's from what happened last year, but there was just a lot of downtime, and you want to have fun. The kids want to have fun during that off time, but if you're someone that's cutting weight, it may not be that fun. It's a lot of, like I said, a lot of downtime to stay focused and get the job done that you're there for.
So last year in that first year, you had a stud, Glenn Denning. His brother's on the team still, right?
Yep, Joey's on the team right now. He's a sophomore, and then we'll have the littlest brother, Jared, who is going to be a freshman next year.
So he made it to the finals, and probably, I don't know, I thought it was the most exciting finals match of 1A, at least. I mean, it was one of those where I think if him and Jackson DeWalt would have wrestled 10 times, I feel like your guy would have came out on top at least 5. I really feel like that. How does your mindset as a coach change, when you have a guy like that in the room versus, when you have a younger team and you're trying to get kids that can maybe be that guy? Does your approach change at all, or is it just kind of business as usual?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Josh, he did everything. He's one of those guys that is truly irreplaceable, because not only did he do his thing on the mat, but the sophomores we have now are better wrestlers and better people because of the influence he had. Not only just in high school, a lot of the youth kids looked up to him. He was super nice, was willing to help anybody on a whim. So it's a tough question, but the lessons that he taught them, you could see it in the team. If we didn't have him last year and then had this group, I think we'd be in a lot different spot than we are now. And I appreciate everything that he did for that team, and I know the kids love seeing him when he comes back from his college break. And I hope he continues to do that.
Whatever happened to Josh? Did he continue his career wrestling collegiately?
Yeah, he's still up at Upper Iowa. He's been doing the opens, and he's been doing pretty well. I don't think he's made the starting lineup, only because they have a freshman rule, that they usually have to sit. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with that right now, but I do know that he was wrestling the opens and was doing really well. So look forward to his future as a college wrestler.
From your perspective, just when you come from a large metropolitan area like Chicago, Glenbard, you said, is there something about quote-unquote Iowa wrestling? Like, I wouldn't understand the fever that Indiana basketball gets unless I experienced it. Is there something about Iowa wrestling that is just something special?
I just think it's different styles of wrestling, and there's some that I would say in Iowa that wrestle like Illinois and vice versa. But I feel like the two main things is Iowa's more like heavy with the hands and on top of the head, where Illinois is a lot of more scrambling. That's how I would decipher the two of them.
Do you think like the college style has anything to influence the high school style, since that's kind of how Iowa wrestles?
I think so. I mean, because that's what the kids look up to, and that's who they watch. And you can look at Illinois, U of I, Illinois, how they wrestle. And when I grew up, that's what it was. I mean, you had one of the top scramblers. It was the top scrambler in the nation at the time. Just any time he went into a scramble and always came up on top, where you watch the Hawkeyes and they're always, just trying to beat the crap out of their opponents mentally and physically with those heavy hands and their ties.
I lived out in western Iowa for 9 years. A lot of Nebraska fans way out there. And I just remember talking to some football coaches that said, what Nebraska used to run, was it the read option? Is that what they ran? Or the triple option? Whatever they used to run. I don't know. When they won their titles in the 90s. But then all the high schools started running whatever offense Nebraska ran. So when they got some of those new coaches in over the years, they started changing that. So it would make sense. For you, you also have that Division III connection, which Iowa has some phenomenal Division III wrestling schools, NAIAs. Like, how good are some of those kids that aren't maybe D1, but they go to some of those schools like the University of Dubuque? Could they hang with any of the D1s, you think?
I think so. I mean, it's like the Big Ten, their conference versus everyone else's conference. In Iowa, University of Dubuque, it's the same thing, their conference. I'm not sure what it's called now. It's changed 3 times since I was there. But their conference always has the top 5-6 teams in the nation are in that conference. So I do believe so. I mean, there's a lot of kids that start at the D3 level, and then they're at the D1 level. Same thing with NAIA. I mean, it just all depends. But the kids think, oh, well, you went to D3 versus D1, you're not as good, and that's not always the case. It just depends what's your best fit for you. Smaller school versus a bigger school, or scholarships and then picking the field of study and just the connections. I mean, the coach that, John McGovern, the head coach at Dubuque, he was a great coach. He still is a great coach and a big mentor of mine. And it didn't matter what level it was. That's who I wanted to go wrestle for.
Yeah, from what I have noticed in the past, you follow the New London kids, and they may have gotten 3rd or 4th at state, and they go off to Co or Central College, and you think, well, they're going to go in and start right away, and they don't. And it's just a big difference between levels of competition. I had a friend once that told me that I think Iowa was playing UNI in football, and it was a really tough game, and everybody in the press box was like, shouldn't Iowa be blowing these guys away? And he goes, this FBS level is just as good as the Big Ten until you get to the second string. Like by the 3rd and 4th quarter, those first stringers will wear down, and Iowa will bring in second stringers, and they'll play just as good as the first team, and those first stringers for you and I are going to wear down. And sure enough, that's what happened. So from your standpoint, those starters at the University of Dubuque could probably hang with at least some Big Ten teams, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, we go to tournaments where, the second squad of Iowa is, and other different Division I colleges are at, and like you said, they hang.
I think the Loras Open was this week. I think Loras Open was yesterday, I think, and you saw a lot of that.
Yeah, it just every athlete is different in their path of life, and that determines sometimes whether they're going D3, D2, D1, or NAIA.
Before we wrap things up here, I want to go back around to the conference results, and then we got an interview with New London coach Damon Loyd. But was there anything over this past week with the conference results that all three of you guys, it was a surprise. You were shocked.
Going back to Shane's question about Wrestleback off the top, that surprised me for CJWMU. If you look at why they won it, Colby Newsom got 5th, first-time wrestler. That was the worst place. And then you had Shaden Adams got 4th. Everybody else on the entire team was 3rd, 2nd, or a champ. There's different ways to win. That's how they won it. Everybody placed and really placed pretty well. I thought Jackson Jones at 120, he's been JV for half the year for CJWMU. That was surprising. But there's some exciting matches. Boyles at 106 over Aney. That was a ranked matchup. Scorpel and Davis was a great match in the finals. That was back and forth. Davis is really good. That was exciting. Just to hammer my Wild Wolves point home. Down 9 points. And what do you get for winning the championship? What's the breakdown there? I don't know what.
I think yesterday, if you pinned your person in the finals, it was 6 total points.
Okay. So went into Russ Bus Coyle, 3rd ranked, 42-0, and he got the fall. So whatever we were down, it was to the point. That's what we needed. Just some drama. And I'm sure there's people in the stands that know all the points, that weren't on track, that knew all that, but it was just a pretty exciting tournament, really.
Shane? Nothing. Okay.
Well, I just know that New London, I think only brought 5, but all 5 did well. They just didn't get any championships, but we'll see how the district fares for them. And Gage, was there anything that decided that point that was really not controversial, but if he would have had if he would have got near fall points instead of not getting near fall points, did that decide the entire tournament?
I think when you look back over a tournament, there's probably a lot of those for the 1 point. But when you look like Notre Dame, WMU, or CJWMU head to head, like Jackson Jones over Brumbaugh for 3rd at 120, a kid who's been JV, and then Bowen Thompson at 132, who made the finals, which I think was surprising. Some of those guys that maybe did better than expected. Cooper Buffington got 3rd at 215. This is his first year. I was at the duels last Saturday at Columbus Junction, and the coaches were telling him don't shoot. His best way to win against this pretty good kid from West Liberty was let the other kid shoot in and then, try to cut a corner or something. When you look at some of those results, that's maybe just exciting as having a Glendenning Hammer going out there or Coyle, when you have a kid who's been decent and then all of a sudden rises up and gets 3rd for his team to win,
Coach Griffin, was there anything that surprised you? Any shockers?
Just the crazy fact that it ended with just 1 point. To touch on what he was just saying, any little thing that day that happened that didn't happen. Just for an example, my kid getting sick and not showing up at 120, if he would have, that could have made the difference of that final team score. I don't know. Another one of my kids, they were wrestling a match against a Columbus kid, ended up, doing a move that he does all the time, and it just happened to go to his back instead, and there was a pin right there. That 1 point, anything could have happened that day that would have made a difference of that 1 point. So for it to end on 1 point of the difference, that it was crazy. The atmosphere was awesome. You don't go to many tournaments other than the state tournament and maybe districts that is that loud and exciting. My voice is more gone than it normally is today because I literally had to scream a whole lot louder because of the atmosphere there. And the kid, especially our freshman group, they haven't experienced that before, so that's why it's good to have these kind of tournaments going into districts and state, because if you get to that level, you got to understand you may not hear your coach, and you got to know the situation, you got to know the time on the clock, so it all factors in. But no, it was a good day. I'm proud of my kids. Like I said, we all placed except for one. Couldn't ask for a better day. Of course, at the end of the day, we would have liked to get second or first, but where we're at right now, I'm happy with, and we're going to continue to grow. And I look forward to the future with this group.
Coach, you had talked about, or I guess we talked about it last week on our show, but I want to get your opinion on this. Who gets more involved in the wrestling meets, mom or dad?
Oh, that's a hard question to ask. That's a toss-up. Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that. That's a hard toss-up. I get it probably depends on the family.
Yeah.
It's different for every family. I couldn't tell you the right answer. Whatever I would say would probably be wrong anyways.
Yeah. I don't think you can say a wrong answer with that one, actually. Shane, you had talked to Damon Loyd, coach of New London Wrestling. He had some expectations for this year.
He is the first year coach of New London after replacing Mark Cheery, who retired after, I'll say close to 4 decades. He's battling a numbers problem this year. So what he's focused on, and he kind of brought this up, I caught him right before they were doing a quad tournament here in New London, but he's basically focused on just getting those guys that he's got to wrestle up to their capabilities, and he has a couple that could definitely go to Des Moines this year.
All right, let's have a listen.
This is Shane Barron for WrestleCast. I'm interviewing Damon Loyd, first-year coach at New London, but he's not a first-year coach to wrestling. He's been through the trials and tribulations of a wrestling season. Damon, how's the season been going for you?
It's going. I mean, I can't complain about my guys I got. They're low in numbers, but they're all working hard for me, doing what I ask.
We have a new situation in Iowa where it's 24 wrestlers going to qualify for state. What's the outlook look like for New London?
We got a tough district. We go back up to Wilton, and there's quite a few good teams there. But I'd like to think a good day for us would be 3 to 4. Average day would be 2 qualifying. So
listeners can look for what names then when the results come out from New London at least?
I'm not going to just say names, but Burton's a 2-time qualifier. Mikey Raines was one match from winning last year. Gavin Bailey's been improving, probably the most improved this year. Okay. And then Kane Forseen, our freshman at 120. He's got a good shot too.
What is an event like tonight look like for you? You have had a full season, and we've got, for those of you who are listening, we have Burlington, Notre Dame, L&M, Van Buren County. What does a wrestling coach have to go through to get a quad going?
It's just on the schedule, and the district's been, or the conference or whatever, been doing them like this for a couple of years now because of the numbers in the teams. Like Notre Dame's probably going to be the only team that has a full team here today. Okay. I'm not a big dual fan just because I have 6 kids, you know, so I'm down 42, 48, nothing before it even starts, depending on how we match up. So I basically just look for good quality matches to get my guys ready for the end of the year.
So there could be some...
There'll be some good matches, yeah.
Moving up and moving down just to get a quality match going?
Yep.
Okay. And do other teams do that a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people do. Some people like to dodge. I don't dodge because I'm looking for my guys to get good matches to get them ready. A lot of people might dodge. The only ways I say people dodge, some people may dodge to win the duel. Like, I'm not going into it to win the duel because I don't have a chance right now. Okay. So I have a full team. You know, it's we're looking for good matches to get ready to go.
So that's kind of interesting to me, is that the strategy involved from coaches, because it is, you know, playoff time. Can you kind of tell us what the next couple weeks will look like for you?
Well, we're rounding it up. This would actually be our last week of competition, but we lost Pekin earlier in the year due to just numbers, and then I had 1 date short, so we picked up Davis County next week, which is an open week for most people just because they don't have sectionals anymore. Everybody has districts. So we're going to Davis County Thursday for a duel, and then also we got canceled. The Waco Invitational got canceled, so it got makeup day to Saturday. So we have another full week next week.
And wrestling's a tough sport to get trained for anyway.
Oh, yeah.
This weather hasn't helped you any, has it?
No. We got Burton's kind of bigged up. He's not wrestling tonight. He had a little ear problem, so he had it fixed, and then he's been sick since. So we've got to get him just basically healthy for the end of the season.
Hey, Coach, I appreciate your time. And This is Shane Barron with Damon Loyd for WrestleCast.
Thank you.
Coach Griffin, Shane just brought up an interesting fact here. Mark Cherry had been at New London for about 4 decades, and Damon Loyd came in and took over a program. The transition, you are in the same boat with Dan Cummings.
My advice, and this is what I did. I mean, it definitely helps to be a teacher, especially at the middle school level, building those relationships with them at a younger age. And then, junior high football, getting them to transition to that next sport, building the relationship on the field, and then trying to get them out for wrestling. I mean, that's what I started doing. It's helped a lot. If you want to be a good football player, wrestling's one of the best workouts for you, and vice versa. If you want to be a good wrestler, football's a really good workout too, and a way to get better at both.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. We've got an interview coming up with Columbus Winfield Mount Union wrestler Jacob Nelson, and we've also got Riley Raines, also a wrestler from New London. That'll be right after this from Helmerson Chiropractic in New London. Helmerson Chiropractic in New London offers services customized to treat your needs. Whether you need relief from chronic pain, sports injuries, headaches, carpal tunnel syndrome, fibromyalgia, vertigo, or just overall aches and pains, Dr. Kyle Helmerson can customize a treatment plan for you. It's time you enjoyed a pain-free life. Contact Helmerson Chiropractic in New London at 319-217-9425.
And now, back to some more Mat Chat with Gage, Shane, and Danny on the WrestleCast.
Welcome back to the WrestleCast, a podcast about the stories behind the wrestlers. Once again, we ask you that you please like and subscribe so that we can continue bringing you this awesome program. Right now, we've got another point counterpoint. Gage, give me the subject.
All right, true second place.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I went first last time. You go first.
Gage's going first.
Can I take either side?
Was this moot court? I mean, do I have to think on my feet? I'll try. Let's give it a shot.
I'll go for it. So, districts is the easiest one. Top two go to states. I mean, obviously you have to have that figured out. The argument, it was actually from a listener who brought this up to me, that at state you should have true second, meaning you would lose a finals match and have to come back, and if you hadn't beat the third place guy, go beat him. And so if you really want to know, I guess, who deserves which spot on the podium, that would be a way to do it. You can probably tell by my voice, I don't really believe in that. At districts, 100% do it, but maybe it would depend on the tournament. I mean, maybe that's a solution to your conference tournament situation also. Have true second Wrestleback at the bracketed tournament.
I'll say this. There's points on both sides. I'm not a coach. We have a coach sitting here. His perspective would probably be more valuable than mine. But I have talked to kids after they've just lost in the finals, and they are emotionally wrecked sometimes. And then to say, go out there and wrestle one more time would be pretty tough for them to do. We've all coached in some capacity. We've all performed sports in some capacity. And when you lose a heartbreaking match or something like that, your coach can tell you, yeah, but the team could get a second place trophy instead of a first place. I get the districts. I wouldn't do it at state.
Coach?
Districts, I see it working because, for one, it's a one-day tournament. Now, if you did that at state and we just added a fourth day, you'd have to add a fifth day just to have the true seconds, because with the three classes, you wouldn't be able to fit it in because state finals doesn't get done till usually 10 o'clock at night.
Pretty late.
So are we coming back on Sunday just to wrestle the true second matches? I personally just don't see that working. And like you said, the kids are heartbroken. I mean,
right.
What kid isn't? And then to come back the next day just for that one match, I just don't see it happening. But districts is a definite, because there's only 8 kids too, and sometimes the other side of the bracket isn't as strong as the first. It happens, and at the end of the day, you want the 2 best kids in that bracket going down to state.
I personally think the 2 best atmospheres are districts, when you have the weights, both mats going on the same weight at the same time, because you said see kids peeking over, is the kid that I beat, is he winning over there? And then the semifinals going into the finals, just because you know what's on the line. Obviously the finals is pretty cool too, but I don't know, the semis, for whatever reason, in that Wrestleback situation at districts, there's not anything like it in sports.
Yeah, some of those true second matches are better than the finals matches because they know it's do or die at that time, and they
Right.
Leave it all out there. You see kids wrestle ways that they've never wrestled before because it's all coming from the heart right there.
Well, Mark, you alluded to a fifth day, and you've also alluded to the difficulties of coping with downtime. There's some downtime coming up between yesterday's conference tournament and the districts. What do you do as a coach as far as motivation and weight control?
By this time, as far as weight control, your metabolism should be at an all-time high. So that's usually not a big case, or at least in my experience, unless, who knows, maybe last week you decided to finally make your cut to a different weight class. That hasn't happened with me just yet, but it could with other schools. But and then this year with all the snow days and the cancellations, most people are doing all their makeups this week, so that doesn't factor in it this year. But last year, we'll speak on last year, we had those 2 weeks off. I mean, you shorten practices, you get in and get out, and you get the job done. You focus on what we've been doing well all year. You don't really try to add anything new. But yeah, just get them in, get them out, have a really good workout, and, just stay mentally strong and focus on the end goal.
From your experience, are kids better practitioners of their own weight management? Are they more knowledgeable about nutrition? And, I mean, you can't starve yourself and still be healthy and strong. You gotta know carb intake. I mean, are they better at that than they used to be?
Juniors and seniors, yeah.
Sure.
Freshmen and sophomores, they're still learning. They make weight. Then after their tournament on Saturday, they think that they can eat whatever, and how much they eat, I have no idea, but they eat a lot, and then they come in Monday and they got to start all over again. They just haven't developed that maturity that realizes that, if I do this for a couple months, then I don't have to worry about my weight cut. And they don't realize how harder they are making it on themselves, because they shouldn't be focused on the weight cut. We should be focused on getting better as a wrestler. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of newer freshmen and sophomores make versus an upperclassman.
And there's got to be way too much information on the internet about cutting weight, and probably a lot of disinformation.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can't believe everything that you read on the internet, and with all these social media posts that influencers have, some work, some don't. You don't know which ones are telling the truth and which ones aren't.
Well, one of the athletes I talked to this week, Danny, was Riley Raines. He's a freshman at New London, and he told me that he had to wrestle at 144 for a while, and now he's at 132. And I asked him about the challenges of getting from 144 to 132 and keeping his strength, and he had some interesting answers for us.
All right, Riley Raines of New London.
This is Shane Barron for WrestleCast, talking with Riley Raines before his upcoming quad meet with who do we got tonight? L&M, Notre Dame, yep, and Van Buren. So, Riley, what's tonight look like for you?
I got a couple tough matches ahead of me. I already have one person I've wrestled before. That match didn't end up the greatest, and then there's two other kids that I know I could probably beat if I really wrestle good. Okay,
Riley, how's the season been going for you? We're kind of wrapping things up.
Yeah.
So
at the start of the season, it's kind of crazy because I can only lose so much per week because of skin fat testing, and I had to wrestle at 144 when I was trying to cut down to 132. So I was wrestling kids that are like 10 to 12 pounds heavier than me quite a bit.
We're now at 132?
Yep.
So, Riley, what's it like to cut weight? What do you really have to do?
It's really, you just got to eat less food. I try to drink as much water as I can to stay hydrated, and just cutting out more and more food depending on how much I'm losing. But between wrestling practices and the weight I sleep off during the day, it hasn't been too bad.
So it's a common theme or a common rule of thumb that a wrestler will lose a pound while he sleeps. Is that about right?
That's about right. Actually, at the start of the season, I was losing about 2 pounds every night, but now it's around a pound to a pound and a half.
And I just read an article where wrestling coaches, wrestling trainers really advocate that a person who's trying to cut weight still eats 3 to even 4 meals a day. It just has to be smaller content. Have you been kind of following that rule?
Yeah, I just usually breakfast and lunch are really small meals, and then dinner is kind of average, I would say. I just try to keep the water up to a good amount, and I just cut food pretty low. Okay.
Riley, you got maybe a month left of the season, so I have to ask you a fun question. When it's all said and done, hopefully it's up at state and your hand raised with the podium and all that and the medals, there is going to be a time where you can just eat as much as you want. What are you going to eat?
Casey's breakfast pizza.
Why Casey's breakfast pizza? Can it be any breakfast pizza?
No, Casey's has the best, and maybe even a box of Casey's donuts.
What kind of donuts? Cake donuts or glazed?
Any of them.
Okay. Riley's a former student of mine, and it's good to talk to him again. Freshman, correct?
Yep,
freshman at 132 for New London. So this is Shane Barron and Riley Raines for the WrestleCast.
Okay, that was Riley Raines of New London. Thank you, Shane. And speaking of duels.
Yeah, so Tuesday's the day. So 24 schools make the regional duels. So how it works is the top 8 get a bye. They also get a host. And then the other 16 basically have to win one to get the opportunity to beat the host school to go to state. I mean, if you look at 3A, Southeast Polk, definitely the favorite. You know, their biggest challengers, Indianola, who won the Battle of Waterloo, which is a huge dual tournament, probably the biggest dual tournament in Iowa. Bettendorf and Fort Dodge are maybe your other 2 biggest challengers. In 2A, Osage, followed by, I don't know who you want to say is Osage's biggest challenger. I mean, they just look like a buzzsaw. So whoever you think's going to beat the Green Devils. 1A is interesting. So we've kind of had the carousel of Alburnett, Don Bosco, and Wilton for who's ranked where. But that's the order they're ranked. Alburnett 1, Don Bosco 2, Wilton 3. What are your thoughts? Because Wilton hosts, I think, the district you go to, correct? Mediapolis goes up to Wilton this year?
No, that was last year when we were in 1A last year. This year we're in 2A.
So where are you guys going?
We are going to Fairfield.
Okay. So
with West Burlington and Notre Dame. Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Out of those 3, it's probably a toss-up. Our local school that's in a duel, CJWMU, so they have Solon, and the winner gets Mount Vernon. That's at Mount Vernon Tuesday night. If they can beat Solon, I honestly think Mount Vernon's obviously the best team there, but I think they might match up better against Mount Vernon just based on where the strengths of both teams are. But I don't know. Your good guys are going to probably have to pin. You know, you're not as good, not as strong weights, need to stay off their backs and maybe win a toss-up or 2. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the Wild Wolves win that one, but Mount Vernon's pretty dang good. So,
but it is the year of the wolf. You said so.
The year of the wolf in the Iowa and Chinese calendars. So that's correct.
And not only do they have the duels on the line, Mount Vernon's also in their district, so they're going to be fighting for seeds too. So.
Solon also.
Oh, Solon is. Okay, yep. I wasn't sure if Solon was in there. Yeah, so.
That's a good point.
Yeah, not only is it to go to state, but it's also you're fighting for district seeds right there too. So.
Is Independence in there?
No, Independence is at 1A.
They're 2A.
They're 2A. Oh, okay.
They made the duels also. I don't remember where they went. I had it pulled up. But.
Yeah, they're a top 8 school.
Always been a big rivalry with Independence and Mount Vernon.
Yeah. And Solon, because they're all in that conference, Solon hosts the district. So, and our guys have wrestled, the Wild Wolves have wrestled, they're really the Wildcats, I made that up, but CJWMU, they've wrestled Solon before. So I guess that's a question for you. Knowing that you might wrestle these kids again with everything on the line in a week and a half, would you rather wrestle them once, win or lose before, or would you rather have the first time be at districts when it's all on the line?
That's a tough question. It could go either way. It just, like you said, it all depends on the matchups. You mentioned they did wrestle Solon already this year in a duel? Or
not in a duel, but they've seen him in, I think, 1 or even 2 tournaments. So they have. So not everybody's wrestled like head to head, but like some of our main guys have seen the Solon main guys.
Yeah.
All right, guys, and thank you. We are talking about college results and some updates. And Gage, you had mentioned Sanderson.
Yeah, so Cale Sanderson is at 197 dual wins for Penn State. They wrestle Maryland today. Next Friday, they take on Ohio State at home. If they would win both those, which they should, his 200th potential dual win would be in Iowa City here, 3 duels away, which just puts a little more mustard on that hot dog. Everything on the line there.
It's like rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah, and I don't know where we want to start with our college talk, but, last week, Shane and I kind of put Iowa out to pasture saying there's no way they can touch Penn State. That still might be true. I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings, Coach, but they looked really good against Illinois. Illinois is, not the top 5 in the Big Ten, but they have some dudes. Iowa looked the part, and it's kind of the argument, Iowa football won 10 games but looked terrible in all of them. We've talked about how Iowa is a dual team. They've taken care of business all year, but they really haven't looked good. This was the first time I felt like they actually looked good. As Coach Griffin was saying, they're, the heavy-handed dudes just going through their ties and just beating on you and taking your space, but not a lot of action. I felt like this was the first time we saw guys just pounding on, people's head and just snapping and pulling, but then also going in for shots. I felt like the whole team, all 10 weights were aggressive. I don't know. I put a little hope in my sail. I didn't have any last week, but I thought Iowa wrestled the best they have all year against Illinois.
I caught some snippets of some matches. I didn't see the whole thing, but I will say that Ed Ruth losing for Illinois to
Kennedy.
Yeah, Patrick Kennedy. Patrick Kennedy has become my favorite wrestler this year, and I did kind of look at, okay, if we get rid of this gambling scandal, which would Patrick Kennedy at 174, and then Brands moving up to 184, because that I have nothing against Aiden Riggins, but he's just not getting the wins for Iowa this year. That's a whole different team.
Well, you also had Assad, who was at 84 before. So you have 3 guys fighting for 2 spots.
I think Brands would beat Assad.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know, but that puts a little bit of twist on it. If somebody put me on a lie detector test or swore me in a court of law,
right,
I'd say Penn State's still the better team. But
you also throw Cassiope in at heavyweight.
Yeah, Cassiope. Yeah, the gambling scandal has just. Brands may have done his best coaching overall this year to get this team with all the turnover, the graduation losses of Spencer Lee. Yeah, they look a lot better.
Who's most improved? Have you watched much Iowa wrestling?
Oh, yeah. I'm a season ticket holder.
Okay.
Ever since I moved to Iowa, yeah.
Who do you guys think is the most improved? Because that's changed for me in like the last 2 or 3 weeks. At all the maybe new guys in the lineup.
Just this year or from last year to this year? Because if I had to pick, it would be Drake at 125. I mean, he's jumped levels.
Yeah, that's a good point. From last year to this year, I think that's a good point. If you went just this year from beginning to now, would it still be Drake, or is there anybody else that comes to mind?
I'll go Glazier for just this beginning of this year, too.
I would say the same as Glazier.
Okay, Glazier may be a better pick than mine. I was going to say Bradley Hill at the beginning of the year was kind of frustrating to watch. He's a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
He looks good now. I mean, he's not going to beat, Kirk Bleed or, some of those big dogs, but could he get to nationals and maybe have a shot to get 8th or something? That might be a stretch, but he looks good.
Does he wrestle nationals? Do they put Ben in?
I don't know.
Well, he's only wrestled one match, and he beat a ranked kid, and he did not. He was clearly not in shape, and he was mad at his result afterward too, because he knows that he could have done a lot better, but he still got the job done. So I don't know who's wrestling at the end of the year.
You could say the same thing at 184. I mean, and I thought about that because Shane and I had this conversation last week, how Gabe Arnold's wrestling next year. He's redshirting, Keeter's redshirting, and then they looked really good everywhere. 84 is definitely a really weak spot. You know, if they, let's say they win out, which they should against everybody anyways except for Penn State. Let's say they beat Penn State. Arnold's probably going to wrestle. Keeter's probably going to wrestle. They have the matches where they could wrestle in redshirt. If you beat Penn State head-to-head and you'd look good, do you throw those two guys in there? Because Arnold looks the part for sure.
I'm going to take an educated guess that says you will see both of those, Keeter and Arnold, wrestle against Penn State to see where they stand. If they win, red shirts off the table, we're going for it. If they lose, because they get 5 matches. Keeter's only wrestled once. I'm going to guess he wrestles today against Northwestern. Then we take the red shirt off and we go for it. That's
my only question is, which I don't know the answer to, is if they pull for Ben, since he's a football player too. If you pull a red shirt for wrestling, is that a year off for football too? Do they go hand in hand, or are they?
It'd be different.
Totally different. Yep. Okay. So then.
I like that though. I mean, you might as well wrestle them against Penn State. They're your best guys. I mean, Keeter's a world champ or whatever he was.
Four-time Iowa State champ.
4-time champ, never lost. Put it all out on the table. See where see what cards you have, and if they both lose, redshirt them, and you know that Hall heavyweight, I lost his name. Hill, thank you. He's looked okay. You know that Riggins probably isn't going to get to nationals or anything like that, but he actually did look better. But yeah, I don't know. I like that philosophy.
I'll call Tom, see what he thinks.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll listen to me.
He'll say, I love it. I love it. I love it.
But I mean, so let's go back down. 33, Shriever or Teskey? Because Shriever's looking good. They bumped Teskey up to 141. He won. I don't know. So I was talking to Damon Loyd. He's my uncle. We were chatting about this a couple weeks ago. And he made the comment that he feels like Teskey kind of peaked in high school, that he hasn't really made much of a jump since being in college, where it seems like every time Shriever goes out there, he's a little bit better.
I will think that you'll see Shriever at 133 for the rest of the year. I think Teskey, I don't know the kid. He wouldn't value my opinion, but I agree with Damon. There's just something not quite right there. He has not looked good, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's a transfer 3 times thing, but he's just never seemed to be impressive in an Iowa singlet.
Just you guys, I want to get your opinion here. Talking about Iowa and Penn State. Not individually talking about wrestlers. I'm just talking about the team as a whole. The Iowa team you've seen against Illinois, is that a team that can beat Penn State? As a whole, not just saying, well, individually this guy could do this. I mean, just like the whole team.
Iowa's got to wrestle their best. I mean, for that to even it's got to be a perfect day, and that's coming from an Iowa fan. We got season tickets. I'll be there. Of course, I want them to win, but it's because we're our weakest. They're their strongest, and then our other bottom half is just as good, maybe a little better, but we'd have to have our perfect day.
Shane?
I would say that if Iowa wrestled its best, they would probably win 5 matches, and Penn State would win 5 matches. But of the 5 matches, Penn State would probably get bonus points in them.
Gage?
I don't think Iowa has the bonus point firepower. I'd agree. I could even see Iowa winning 6 of the 10, but I still don't think they win the duel that way, just because, that's why Penn State's won, the last few national championships. They're winners and penners, and, they get all those bonus points.
Any other last words or prediction, guys?
I just wanted to say that Oklahoma State kind of had its way with the Iowa teams this week. They beat Iowa State 21-13. They also beat UNI 22-12. But probably the feature match of both those would have been Parker Keckeisen of UNI decision, Dustin Plott, number 2. Keckeisen won, Plott 2, 12-6. So that's a pretty convincing match, or pretty convincing result. So I think UNI has a very good chance of crowning a NCAA champion this year with Parker Keckheisen. Other than that, I want to give a shout out to Matt Levins, colleague at the Hawkeye. He wrote a nice story about Greg Durbin from Morning Sun. Fischel is carving his niche up at Des Moines with starting a youth program, and things are going well for Mr. Durbin. So you're part of Mark. You're part of the Southeast Iowa culture deep now. So all these names probably sound a little familiar, and maybe they don't. But you're in Southeast Iowa wrestling now. So congratulations for getting your job at Mediapolis. It was nice to meet you, and we look forward to seeing Mediapolis here in the next couple of weeks.
Gage, any predictions?
Yeah, my last thing, just the girls. Somehow that slipped through the cracks today, but I went up to the girls' super regionals, to support the kids that I'm the principal, at their school, and it was the best run meet, minus the way it was set up. If you lost early, you were buried in the Wrestlebacks. So there's 9 rounds in this thing with all the Wrestlebacks because it's a 32-person bracket. There's only 25 teams, so obviously there's some bias. But Josie Nelson was our WMU, CJWMU, but WMU's first ever girls qualifier. And she had to wrestle 6 matches to do it. And in her consolation semi to get to the 3rd place match, she had the girl almost pinned for 45, 50 seconds. It ended up hurting the girl's shoulder, but both girls are just crying afterwards. And I saw this probably 6 or 7 times that day. Near pins, just taking all their juice. And just like emotionally what that did to them. I mean, it wasn't just like who's the best. It was almost like who's the most endurance, when you have to wrestle that many matches. But how they set it up, so it's 2 regionals in one building. And so they went around Iowa and they picked big venues. So this is the Alliant Powerhouse, used to be the 5-season center or whatever it was. And so on one side there's 4 mats and it's all region 5. And on the other side 4 mats and it's all region 6. And you stay on your side the whole day. Except for if they get to like an end of a session, they do some overflow on the other side. And they had everything up on the board. And then they had, it was like state with, what weight and what bout it is. And they're announcing just all day who's up. And it just went smooth. I mean, one round would get over. They'd go right to the next round. They had people escorting girls where they need to go. There's tons of room to see. It was all down below. It was my first time watching girls wrestling live. And maybe you can help me out with this. I've never seen so many pins. Like, is it just because they don't have the technique yet? But it just seemed like it was just pin city. There was very few matches, it seemed like, that went the distance for a decision. I don't know if it's just, girls learning or if it's just the style. Like they're just, throwing their best shot all the time or I don't know.
I think with the regionals, and like you said, there being so many teams, you have, a bunch of teams from where there's 3A schools that have the bigger teams, more practice partners, and then maybe some of the smaller schools, not used to wrestling those kind of caliber teams. So I think that could definitely make a difference. And yeah, I mean, with girls just being sanctioned not too long ago, you have a lot of brand new girls just starting up right now where there has been girls that have been, sure. We have some girls that were wrestling with the boys that are probably seniors now, so
yep.
It just depends. But I could see a lot of pins, if you're coming from a big prestige dominant school versus a smaller school.
So a couple points you made. So Ridgeview, who's a 1A, 2A school in Western Iowa, they won their super region, which is kind of unheard of. West Liberty and East Buchanan, who are small, West Liberty's a 2A, East Buchanan's a small 1A school. They both did very well there in Cedar Rapids. So going back to your point, Coach, on a girl who was on the boys' side, Rihanna Utterbeck, who we've talked about on this show before, she's going to be the 3 seed at 115. She's 44-0. She's never lost to a girl. And it's because the other 2 girls in her weight class, Molly Seck of Sioux City North, who's 33-0, and Ellie Wheats, who's 48-2, they were qualifiers last year. So when you do the seeding, they're going to get more of those seeding points over Rihanna. And so that was interesting. So that is like a weight I have circled to watch, that 115. 110, the Ottumwa girl, I've seen some videos of her wrestling. Ludecki, I don't know if that's how you say it. She's 33-0, and she is just a beast. But just watching, I was kind of watching both super regionals, and when the 1 and 2 seeds went out, I would not want to see those girls in a dark alley. Just they were very great technique, but just the way they were built for their weight and how they handled themselves, like they would beat some boys. I mean, there's some studs. So Josie Nelson made it at 140. It's a loaded field. She'll be the 19th seed. If she can win her first match, she's 30-7. She'll take on Lizzie Wolf of Benton, but some other good girls at that weight. Kiara Dumas of Waverly Shell Rocks, unbeaten, 41-1. Becara Vasquez of West Liberty's there. There's a Spencer girl who's the 2 seed, Shaylee Sutherland, who's 41-3. And so, that's going to be a loaded weight. One thing just to point out also while we're on girls before we go, there's 3 like co-op programs in Iowa that had a lot of success. So one was the Western Iowa Wolves, which is it's Westwood, MVAO, River Valley, maybe Woodbury Central. I don't know. There's like 5 or 6 schools, and they rotate where they practice. The Raccoon River Northwest, which is somewhat similar. And then there's one where I don't know where this one's from, CBCSD, but they put girls through. And so what these schools are doing is they only have 2 or 3 girls themselves. So they're just picking a host site, and they're having 4 or 5 schools bring their 2 or 3 girls, and then they can put a full team out there. So it's just it's a different world with girls wrestling, but I'm hoping to go up. Pretty cool atmosphere. I saw some videos last year in Iowa City there at the Extreme Arena. It's only one class, so 32 girls, one class. For the finals, they turned down the lights and they shot the fireballs, did like the the intros, and then the 2 girls out there like they do in, NCAA, D1 nationals and whatnot. So, I was looking at a stat. I think it's 16 or so % more girls wrestlers this year than last year that wrestled at the Super Regional. So it's definitely growing, which I think is good for all of it. I mean, I think girls wrestling growing is good for boys wrestling. The more we're talking about wrestling, I think the better. So,
and the Mediapolis girls we had in here a couple weeks ago, they made history.
Yeah.
Got their first pin at Wapello, I believe, the other night. So, yeah, congratulations to them. And I think Lindsay Marshall, one of the coaches, said that they had 3 girls join that night.
Yeah, since the last time you talked, I think the team's doubled. We keep getting more high school and junior high girls out each and every day. So,
Coach, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been great having you here.
Thank you for having me.
I have one last question just for you. Tell me what it's like being a wrestling coach. What's the life of a wrestling coach?
That's a hard question. There's so many things that factor into wrestling. I think what I preach to my kids is a lot of it's not just about wrestling. I mean, it's about the life lessons that it teaches you. It's not just about being on the mat. It's about what you do off the mat. And, our goal as a wrestling coach is to either get those athletes to the next level or, make them the best person that they can be when they are off the mat. And, when that happens, when you see that, that's what it's all about. That makes it so awarding, whether they're wrestling or whether they're not, just that they're a good human being and they're still busting their butts like they would on the wrestling mat.
Mediapolis coach Mark Griffin, thank you. On behalf of Gage Gill and Shane Barron, I'm Danny Davis. And once again, thank you for listening to the WrestleCast. Please like and subscribe, and also make sure and check out some of the other videos on our channel. Thank you. Good show, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good meeting you.
That's it for this week's edition of the WrestleCast. For questions on advertising on our program, or if you'd just like to drop us a line, you can do so at sportscastmedia@outlook.com. Follow Sportscast Media on Facebook, or go to our website at www.sportscastmedia.com. The WrestleCast is a presentation of the Sportscast Media Network.